Do you want to help streamline your presentations, Zoom calls, maybe going live, or just day-to-day work, make it easier and use an accessory like a programmable keypad, such as the Stream Deck or the Loupedeck, but you're not really sure which one is right for you? They are investments, and there are some similarities, but there are also some differences. So that is what we are going to talk about today. It's comparing two of these options. They're not the only options, but they're the two that I have experience with. So we're going to do a side-by-side. They're both on my desk right now. I will break down what's the same, what's different, what should you know if this is the type of thing that interests you. And if you are new and you've never met me before, my name is Kat, and I help people to create more professional and engaging online presentations. And these have become tools that I depend on. So let's take a look at my desk. Right now, I have a side-by-side of the Loupedeck Live, which I recently shared sort of how I have found it, using it over the last few months. And I also have the 15-key Stream Deck, which I've got currently set up. I also, in the background, you can probably see a peek here that I've got the Stream Deck XL. So the Stream Deck XL, I have it here just from a size standpoint. It is not currently hooked up. Because I've been using the Loupedeck regularly, and I like a lot of the features on it, and I've really started to integrate it into my day-to-day, I decided to switch back to the 15 key and use that instead just from a space standpoint, because it just takes less space. So typically on my desk, I will have the Loupedeck on the left and I have the Stream Deck on the right. They are both just kind of off the side of my keyboard, so they're very easy to reach, and I can just move my hand slightly off the keyboard, either right or left, and choose my action. What is the thing that I want to do? So let's just take a look. Physically, they're actually pretty similar size-wise. Obviously, the Loupedeck Live is a little bit wider than the Stream Deck, because the Stream Deck 15 key is just that. It's 15 keys, whereas the Loupedeck has 12 of the programmable screen keys for tapping, but it also does have down the side, it's got your dials, and then along the bottom, you have 8 buttons as well. So that's the main difference size-wise when you compare these. If you were to compare these two, I mean, the XL is significantly bigger. And so let's get into just what makes them very similar. So they are both programmable keypads, meaning you can change these up and they're responsive, so they have the screen. There are other programmable keypads where they might just have numbers or you can put stickers on them, but these are actually digital interfaces, so they will update based on if you want to have an icon or a text. They have some default, and the main thing is you can customize them. And I've actually made these very similar so that you can see them side by side. I kind of set them up to show you what that looks like. The other thing is that from a setting it up, they are both drag and drop. So when you open the application to update these, you are simply dragging and dropping what is the action you want into the key that you want. So they're both pretty easy to actually set up. And then you can easily customize your icon if you have custom icons you want to use, or if you want to choose from the library. They both have libraries of icons as well. And they also have multiple profiles, pages, workspaces. So there are different names for them. But if you look here, I don't know how easily you can see that. On the side here, I've dedicated some keys to switching between profiles. That's one of the ways that I personally handle that. It's because I don't want to necessarily have to do that on the computer. And then here with the Loupedeck, anything that's green means you're switching to another workspace. And so there are multiple layers. The main reason I bring this up is that you aren't just limited to the keys that you can see. There actually can be many, many different profiles, pages. We've got folders on the Stream Deck, and you can even, with this one, I don't know if I have it here, but you can swipe and have multiple pages. So really there are layers, and you can really customize this the way that you want. With the Stream Deck, you obviously, if you're having folders or profiles, you can do that with a key, pressing a key, going to another profile, and here you can do it with keys as well. You can also change these manually by going to the app, switching which profile you want to have on there. One of the reasons that many people will move from the Stream Deck 15 key to the 32 XL is because they say, you don't want to necessarily have to switch all the time. If you have a lot of keys that you use regularly, having them all in one place becomes attractive, but there's definitely a consideration around the size and how much space you have on your desk for that. I would say when we get into the differences, the biggest difference is that these keys are physical buttons, whereas these are tap. So these are touch. And so this is a little bit, the entire Stream Deck is very tactile. It's hard to accidentally press a button. You actually have to press that button and push down on it. With the Loupedeck, these are very tactile at the bottom. The dials are very tactile. You are either turning them or pushing them like buttons. But these guys are touch, so they are more sensitive. And there are times where I have accidentally tapped one of these and opened something. And that, I would say, is a big consideration for considering your workflow. I said consider twice there. When it comes to the way that you work, you want to think about how you like to use the tool. If you are someone who wants to be completely not having to look down to see what you are doing, you might prefer a more tactile experience like the Stream Deck. I do find the corners, I just looked down, but I can feel a corner key. So I would usually put the main keys I wanted to use, for example, going to a main camera, I would put that on these corners, or if I wanted to mute or start or stop a stream. I did something similar with the Loupedeck where this key is to start or stop the live stream. I'm not going to press that right now, but I want to make sure that I can feel this without having to look down, and it's also very purposeful, intentional. I'm not going to accidentally stop a stream. However, in my experience with the Stream Deck, is that I do have to look down to confirm that I'm pressing the right key when they're more in the middle, especially when you have a lot of real estate like the 32. So I would be looking down and actually checking that. So I would say keep that in mind, that I think it's really hard to never look down at your device that's helping you. And we're not going to talk about it today. We'll talk about it in a different video, but the pedal is different. The Stream Deck pedal that was just released very recently, that has three keys with your foot, and you are not supposed to look down. You might have to think about which pedal is which, but that is purposely designed to never actually look down. But I did want to address that because I think at first I was feeling some frustration at needing to look to make sure I was tapping on the right key, because it's a little bit harder to feel. Because these down the side, these little screens, those are actually menus to tell you what your dials are, which is helpful because you don't have that label or sort of screen on the dials. So it does have it beside. For example, that's a volume button. You can see that there's volume. This is media track control. So I can see those. But if I press on it, nothing happens because maybe I was actually trying to press the button beside it. And that's something that I think you should definitely know about. Obviously, a very glaring difference is that the Loupedeck has dials, and that there are certain functions that you can do with the dials that you obviously don't have dials here. So if you are someone whose workflow may really like using the dials, and I will say that the appealing part for editing is that you can use the dials to kind of fine tune things, to be able to zoom in or to kind of scan. I don't do a lot of editing, and I'm not optimizing or utilizing this, but the Loupedeck, the original Loupedeck, this is the Loupedeck Live, the original Loupedeck CT, I believe it is intentionally for people who are working with, for example, Adobe and editing software and Photoshop and whatnot. So they were sort of designed with that in mind, so that you have the combination of those buttons, the key touchpads, the tactile buttons at the bottom, and then also having the dials. So there's a little bit more diversity with what you can do. And those are really the main differences that I see. I would love to take some questions now, and then I'll sort of wrap up this comparison. And then I can also take a few more questions after that, but we'll kind of cut that a little shorter. So I just want to see if there are any questions here around Okay, so here's a question that I don't actually know if I can answer this or not. But does the Loupedeck require more computer power? My understanding is Stream Deck requires less. So I don't actually know. My gut would be it would not be very different. If any, I can maybe look into some of the power use. I won't do that right now, but I would say that you can maybe do a little digging, see if anyone else has already done that comparison before. And okay. And I also see, yeah, I use the same two Stream Decks you have, smaller for the weekly, so you're definitely using that here. And okay, so I see a question here. Can you change the number of tiles? Like have 4 instead of 9 plus. I'm not sure I fully understand the question here. So with the layers, so to speak, they all have different names. You can have as many pages and profiles as you want. So whether you use profiles, whether you use folders, or here with doing this kind of swiping, I can swipe and have multiple pages on here. So that's where you start to get in that customization, but the physical device is obviously limited, but you can start to layer on, like adding those pages that you use and bring that into your productivity and what works for you. All right. And I saw, I do the corner thing with our podcast on screen with a co-host. And so you can do the corner buttons. That is a great way to not look down and you can kind of remember, or along the top. I've managed a panel where I just knew that each person, their camera was along the top. And so I can use that. Sometimes though, I would kind of just check. I think it's maybe just a safety thing, making sure that you have the right thing. All right. Okay. So yeah, I was thinking about using Loupedeck for non-attendance activities. There are lots of options. Oh, I do want to mention that I was in touch with Loupedeck because I had asked around customization. So for example, it's kind of hard to see on here because of the screen quality, but these are 2 Zoom icons that are actually from Zoom. They're a Zoom app, meaning they're designed specifically for Zoom. Similarly, Keynote, at least Keynote for Mac, well, Keynote's obviously only Mac. You can have Keynote functionality where it's next slide, etc. I use those for workshops, and I have tried using the Loupedeck kind of going next slide, but there's no designed Keynote slide for the Loupedeck, but there is for the Stream Deck. And Stream Deck has obviously been around for a while, and so they do have a marketplace of different plugins for specific apps. Loupedeck is working on their marketplace, so they are actively working on that, so you can go and get specific plugins or app-specific keys, I guess you could say. And that is rolling out. I believe this spring is where Loupedeck is really building that up. For right now, I think it's for maybe developers, whereas down the road, people might be able to contribute their own ones that they have made. Depending on when you're watching this, I don't know what the status will be, but it's definitely something that's being built out. I do find those really helpful. So one of the things right now, there are a lot of plugins that have been created for the Stream Deck. There are fewer right now for the Loupedeck, so you can go and see what exists, but know that that is going to expand and grow. And a lot of these things you can set up on your own, but not everything. So there are going to obviously be some key differences there. So I think looking into what are the programs you use, what are the plugins you want, see what people are doing. But it sounds like the Loupedeck is definitely expanding their marketplace so that you can have some more customization. And I'm hoping one of my wish list is that every app, so when you just say, I want to open, say, Ecamm Live, which I'm using right now, the app photo will come along with it. Whereas that doesn't happen for majority of apps on the Loupedeck unless they've already created one for that. For example, Photoshop or Premiere Pro, they have icons built in, but Slack that I have here, I had to put that icon on myself. So those are some of the key differences. So those are really the main things to consider. I find both have pretty easy to use interfaces for setting them up. The drag and drop is really simple. The type of actions you can do, I've been able to do the same things on the Loupedeck that I've been able to do on the Stream Deck. So really, I think it comes down to what's your space, how many keys you want. Like some people, it's going to make more sense to have the 32 keys available to you all the time. Are you going to use the dials or not? And also, what are you using this for on the regular? Are you someone who cares about whether you have to look at it or not? If you're not using it for live streaming or managing a presentation where eye contact really matters, then you're probably going to be looking at it, and that's okay. If it would be really dramatic for you to make a mistake because of the sensitivity, then maybe you want to go with slightly more tactile. But if that's not a threat, then you have a little bit more diversity with the Loupedeck. Okay. I hope this has helped you. I know that both of these have helped me to run smooth presentations, to be able to manage multiple things at one time, like having slides, like running my virtual camera, and managing a Zoom room. So I love both of these, and I'm not going to answer if I had to pick one because I'm using both and I'm pretty happy with both. I know that's not for everyone's budget. So hopefully the information that I've given you about the similarities and differences is enough to help you at least make a more informed decision about which one will help you to create more professional and engaging online presentations.